I think, Bill, I'm gonna throw it over to you. And just as we get started here, I think it's important to reemphasize what maybe Phil said in the beginning. Bill and I are just going to kind of bat around some ideas, things that we do on a day-to-day basis. And this is a topic actually that came from some of our viewers from past webinars, where they really wanted to kind of just talk through the routine of the thought process of setting up call centers and setting up a whether it's project-based or a year-round call center on campus or elsewhere, where they wanted to just get us on and talk about the topic, answer questions that are typically or maybe concerns that are typically on top of mind within higher ed institutions, and that's why we're here today. So as I said, Bill and I are going to kind of bat around some ideas and thoughts as we walk through each slide. We'll cover it a little bit each, both of us will. And please ask questions. So if questions are coming up on particular slides, it's always a little, it's always hard to have the back and forth on a webinar like this because you're not actively involved and can't jump right in with a question. So feel free to ask that question through the tool that Phil just explained, and we will get to it as we get near the conclusion of the presentation. So Bill, over to you.
Well, we're looking at the history of contact centers. I go back to the very beginning. Some say, Joe reminds me every day that go back as far as the crank phones. Not quite, but the difference between today and yesterday is quite dramatic. It truly is. When I started in the call center business as a young man, everything was manual. Now technology has taken over, and dialing manually is something that you truly do not want to do if you can possibly avoid it. So we're here today to talk about the technology that has been happening and really happens almost on a daily basis, and the different items that you might want to take a look at when discussing whether you should either outsource or bring a call center in with the company that you're talking with that's going to help you out. There are certain things in admissions that when I started some 22 years ago that one needs to be totally aware of when outsourcing to a vendor or asking for their help to set up a call center. They need to be fully aware of who you are, what you do, who it is that you're looking for, such terminology as retention, yield, the not very important things, right? Those are the most important things. And then building the survey instrument is also extremely important, and we'll cover that a little bit later. But I think that's really the most important items, and that is take a look at who it is that you're talking with. There are many call centers, vendors as they're called, out there, but there are only 3 or 4 that really have the knowledge that you're looking for. Joe or Phil, you want to hop the next slide up there? So the funnel is something that you all understand, and we're not here to tell you anything about that except to mention the fact that we understand it. And when does it begin? Well, it begins when you want it to begin, but I like to say it should begin in the summertime, and that's something that we can talk about maybe at a later date. But Joe, anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, yeah, the recruitment funnel is probably a little bit different for everybody, right? As far as the time of year that things start, obviously there's rolling admissions for some, others, it's very, very strict dates that they're all working up against. But who are we looking to reach is pretty much the same, I think, across all. Is how early in the funnel do you want to start talking to those that are prospects for your current institution. So you're reaching out to potentially juniors, maybe rising juniors as they're entering into their senior year, and then of course the seniors as well. There's always an approach to each, and obviously I think what we're all hearing today is that, or at least what we're recommending, is that you want to start that process as early as you can. There's a lot of competition out there, and I think telephone outreach is the one way where you can really begin to understand what's on the mind of that junior, what's on the mind of the parent of that junior or senior, as they're getting closer and closer to making that decision on where they want to go. Obviously, understanding your own, shaping your own enrollment class is something that very personally. So understanding what kind of makeup of a prospect pool that you have in front of you is the starting point. And then we will begin to make that telephone outreach as part of the overall effort to get your school in front of them. So you're doing a lot of different things, and sometimes telephone outreach may not be a strong method in which that you really focus your energy on. And what we're saying here today is that we really need to make that a part of your overall strategy. Start getting them on the phone, having conversations, and prepping your counselors to help that student understand whether or not it's a good match.
The funnel itself has changed over the past 5 years, 10 years. Now you hear the term helicopter parent. 5 years ago, that terminology was non-existent. The student made the decision where he or she wanted to go to school, and if the parent could afford it, off they went. It's quite different now. Most parents are heavily involved in the choice of an institution, and also that funnel is a collection of data that comes from so many different sources, and much of it digital. There are many studies out there that all of you know much better than I that state that if a student doesn't get or a prospect who is thinking of going to college, higher education, doesn't get their answers on a website within, I don't know, Joe, what is it, 30 seconds or something like that, they move on. They move on to the next website. And so the information age, as it's called, or that funnel, is just chock full of information that the student and parents together it's available to them. So the most important thing, I believe, and I think most others do also, is to make contact with that student as early as possible in the process, and to get to know them and them to know you. And so that's the biggest part of the funnel, is that outreach, and that's why companies like us exist, is to help you through that process. Cull the list, grade the list, make sure that those that you're talking with are at least a fair match with your institution. And in the grading process, you want to find out if they're very interested, somewhat interested, or not at all interested. Therefore, the not at all interested do not go into the funnel. And that makes your counselors much more effective. And we've just now moved on to another slide. Joe, you want to take it up from there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good segue into the calendar year, and I think it's basically the re-emphasizing again, understanding what you're calling, who you're calling when, and what's our purpose and goals for each of those outreach. And again, the earlier you start that process, you can begin having those conversations. I think the key is that no matter when you're calling, you got to keep in mind you got to get these students on the phone. Evenings and weekends are the best time to reach out to these people, to get them on the phone, including parents as well. regardless of the survey instrument that you're putting in place or the purpose of the call, we need to reach them. So we need to call them at the right time. Obviously, understanding the data quality of your list as well is pretty important too. Cell phones, and sometimes you're finding that the numbers that you do have are the parents' cell phones too, so you have to kind of keep that in mind where you're reaching out to folks based on where you're getting that list from. We could be calling people as Bill said, to kind of qualify them and understand what's on their mind and rate them, understanding what's important to them and what's important that they need to know about your institution. And at the end of that call, that goal is to give them pieces of information that now they're going to carry with them as they start to get more information and more mail pieces from your competitors, so to speak, from other schools that they may be hearing from. So that's the ultimate goal, is that we've made an impression with them. We've expressed how interested we are in them coming to your institution. And just hearing that, I think over the phone, getting a call from a counselor or a telecounselor, or maybe even a current student that's there on campus. They've experienced already, what your institution brings to the table for them, and now they're having a one-on-one conversation about it. So now they're leaving that call feeling much more important, feeling like somebody wants me. And now we're leading them down the path of maybe coming on campus for a tour, or at least at the very least, talking to a counselor one-on-one. So that's the purpose of these calls that you're making throughout the year. Bill?
One of the things that you will find out, or instruct those that are working with you to find out, is the makeup of the actual survey itself. And what the survey instrument is designed to do is to give your counselors a jump up. Get to know the student that they're about to call, or the prospect that they're about to call, before making the call, and learn something about them. And that's what a call center or a telephone call will furnish you. And we'll get into this a little bit further later on, but I just want to touch on it now. The questions that one might ask, of course, are designed and custom-made for each institution, but many times you want to know extracurricular activities, financial aid sensitivity, things of that sort. These are all things that you can find out before your counselor makes the call and get the answers, and the counselor will have the answers right at their fingertips. Want to move on, Seth?
Yeah, this is a good segue into who can make that call for you. There's a lot of different options out there, and I know there's probably questions and concerns about each. Obviously, a lot of it may start with budgeting. It may start with space and the ability to get students involved in making these types of calls for you. But there are these options. So you obviously can outsource this type of activity, project-based, throughout the year, through an outsourced call center, through a qualified contact center that you feel comfortable with. In-house calling, I think we'd all agree that you would much rather have students that are currently there, or some, faculty even, volunteers, people that can be, that have firsthand information on what the institution brings to the table and the experience that they're going to feel and have. So having those folks getting on the phone and making those calls comes with certain questions and concerns I'm sure you all have. Like I said, space, budget, training, those types of things, and even the hiring process of getting students, the right students in place to making these calls on the behalf of the institution. Manual dials versus auto dialers. I mean, obviously, it's still happening out there, and even with the technological advances, manual dialing call centers are still in place. It's hard to imagine that it is, given the fact that there are options out there, very, very simple options that you can integrate and make your projects much more efficient by putting in some form of automation. And we'll get into a little bit about the technology on a different slide, but those are some of the things that you might be thinking through: space, hiring, training, the technology that you might want to put in place, and is it outsourced versus keeping it in-house. Options are there, you know, and you know, you should be able to look at them all from all different angles.
One of the things that the last item there, auto dialers, we were talking earlier before the webinar, and I was really reminiscing and thinking about the times where I first started out. People would be asking the same questions. Colleges would ask the same questions. What does it take to open your own call center? First thing I'd say to them, $250,000. But that's not apparent nowadays. The auto dialers, they're hosted. Everything that you have is, or a student needs to talk to someone, is right there in their screen. Even the telephone is what they call a soft phone. It's not a hard phone that used to be necessary. So all of these things are at your fingertips now, and hopefully that's what this short seminar will do, is give you a feel for what you need, the questions you need to ask, and then if there's further interest, feel free to give us a call or send us an email. How about the next slide?
Yeah. So, Bill started to touch on this one a little bit, of building your survey instrument, and you know, obviously it all begins with understanding your own institution and what are the highlights that you want to bring to the table and make sure that your prospects understand. A lot of it is just listening and understanding what's on their mind and what's important to them. We talked about financial aid sensitivity. We talked about maybe athletics is something that is very important to them. Do they want to be do they want to attend a small school or a big school? You know, score. Yeah, how about scores? You know, GPA scores, SAT, ACT scores, even scholarship eligibility. You'll want to understand how you incorporate all of these things and have a good strategy to incorporate all of these types of questions and information along the way as you're building your survey instrument. So we always start off, right, Bill? Every survey we start off is that we're calling on behalf of a school that's very interested in you. We want you to attend the school, and you know, making that very, you know, stressing that right out of the gate, I think is very important, both for the student as well as the parents. And you know, we're talking about parents in here as well. You need to really understand what kind of engagement the parents have decided to take in each of the in each of the students' decision making. Bill, we were talking today about the helicopter parent today. Why don't you talk a little bit about that and how it may, you know, how it's changed a little bit the approach in building our survey instrument.
Yeah, one of the things that I just pulled out of my drawer that I've kept forever is first survey instruments that I wrote, and I'm looking at one now from July 6, 1992.
Wow.
And you know, some of the questions that we were asking at that point, and I'll just read a couple of them to you. I think it's instructive. Which two factors are most important to you in choosing a college? That's the answer to that question can be very revealing. Do you know anyone that has attended College X? Have you discussed College X with your parents or guidance counselor? What subjects do you wish to study in college? What are your career goals? Which groups, clubs, activities, or athletic teams would you like to participate in at college? And then number 9 and 10 are very important today as they were then. Right now, which 3 or 4 colleges are you considering most seriously, And then the next one, would you like an admissions counselor to give you a call in the next few days to schedule a campus visit during the summer, or to answer any questions that you may have? And what should be done from that point forward is to set a date and time for that counselor either to get back with the student or the student call them. 99% of the time, it's the counselor getting back to the student or prospect. And as Joe mentioned earlier, much of this is done in the evening. Believe me, when those calls are made and those connections are made, and as I keep saying, the earlier in the process that they are connected, the better off you're going to be with retention and yield. This is important, that you have counselors on staff that have the ability to work during the evening.
Right. Good segue to the next slide, Phil.
Yeah.
So we talked about some of those key questions. I can't believe you found that. I can't believe that piece of paper is still in existence. I mean, I figured the moths would probably eat at it. The ink would be.
I have a whole book of them. I saved them.
You're
my diary
in good condition.
Yeah.
So those are great questions. I mean, you know, understanding the competition, what's on their minds, and again, through those questions and answers, we're going to be able to rate them from a high to a low interest, so that again, you know, how many counselors do you have available? You know, let alone in the evening, but just on the whole, you may have 1, 2, 3. I mean, some schools have more, but most of the time, you know, resources are tight. So you need to really kind of prioritize where they need to put their time and energy. So through those questions, you're rating them along the way. Great questions. You know, the programs of interest and what's on their mind, and you know, what other schools are they looking at, and where do they rate your school in relation to the others. Gaining the contact information, as simple as address, the cell phones, and the emails, are crucial these days. You know, especially cell phones, where texting is now becoming more prevalent. But from the standpoint of follow-up methods, you need to have this information. So much of this can be automated. Again, as we started off in the beginning, we were talking about dialing manually versus in an automated fashion. This is where it really makes the difference, because there's so many things that you can do as a direct result of a phone call immediately, automated. So if you're rating somebody as a very high interest, you may send something out immediately following that call via text, via email, that's very specific to what you learned on that call. You can actually even use, and we've done, Bill, we've done these surveys in the past where the results and the answers to the questions were actually used to customize the follow-up. So a letter that was actually using the words that they used or the answers that they used to the questions that we asked them as part of the follow-up. It's just such a personal touch point that really makes a huge difference. Putting those questions and answers into the follow-up method is really crucial. Bill, why don't you expand on that a little bit? I mean, the advantage surveys that we've always kind of put in place, that we've done in the past, those are things that can be very easily implemented on campus today.
Many schools over the years have done this, where we'll do the calling, we'll perform the instrument, collect all of the knowledge from that, pass it along to the school, and then what happens is that they use that information in any of the collateral that's sent out to the student. For instance, it may say, Judy, when you spoke with one of our telecounselors a month or so ago, you indicated that your interest was in blank, because we've already collected that answer, and that extracurricular activities that you might be interested in are the following. And I'd like to tell you that those interests, especially the one that you mentioned in about tennis, we have a wonderful program. So what I'm getting at here is you can personalize, either through a written instrument or by another phone call, the information that a call center will collect on your behalf. And I must say this again: the call center that is working on your behalf better know what they're talking about, because you can't ask a question unless you know what question to ask.
Right. And along the same lines, there's a few other follow-up methods below here. Warm transfer, for those that don't quite get what that's talking about, but is when you have a student on the phone, a prospective student on the phone, whether it's in-house with a student or are outsourced with a professional call center, having the warm transfer capability is very important. You'll want to have, obviously you need to have counselors standing by during the call shifts of the call center, but there's nothing better when you have an interested candidate on the phone, have the ability to say, I have a counselor standing by, he or she would really like to speak to you, if not for nothing else, just to introduce, say who have a name, have a face, have some contact information, maybe talk about some upcoming on-campus receptions or open houses as we have listed here. It's a good way to keep the communication and dialogue going as we work them through getting them to matriculate. So having the warm transfer capability in place is huge. And again, back to calling, the necessity of calling on the evenings and weekends, it really leads to the importance of appointment setting. It's going to be very difficult to get that student back on the phone after we've had the initial discussion if we're not calling or the counselor's not calling at the right time. So having a definitive appointment scheduled with a student and or parent, perhaps even having the parent join the call at some point to make sure that they understand that an appointment was met, make sure they write it on a piece of paper and stick it on the refrigerator, right? And make sure that they don't forget about that. Understanding where we're going to call them, whether it's on a cell phone or at their place of work on 2 o'clock next Thursday. So, getting that done is very important. Also, using technology with a shared calendar is very doable. There's a lot of different softwares out there that you could include into your outreach campaign. So where you could have the counselors managing and telling the call center when they're going to be available on certain days, so that we understand what else they have going on and we're not overbooking them or putting too much on them that they can't handle.
Yeah, we even use the Google Calendar. That works really well, where
right.
we can see the appointments that are already, a counselor already has set up. I say we, anyone can use the Google Calendar, and vice versa. So
right.
Whatever call center you're working with, ask them about that capability, and it really is very, very good. One of the items that I see listed there is campus receptions and open houses. I don't have to tell you folks how important those are, because the closing percentages on an open house, if we can get the prospect to an open house, is very high. And things that a call center can do is, as Joe just mentioned, not only speak to the student or the prospect, but we can get the parent on the phone and say, look, Sally or Johnny would like to attend an open house on such and such a date. Do you have any conflicting appointments at that time? And would you care to join Sally or Johnny? So those are the kinds of things that a call center can do, can reach out in a very, very personal way and get to know both the parents and the students even before the counselor makes that first phone call.
Hey, Bill, remember we just did, oh, go ahead, Phil.
No, you go ahead. I was just going to say we've got about 5 more minutes to wrap up our presentation, and then we can take some questions. We've got got a few coming in. Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that just kind of hit me that was very successful in getting the kids on campus was we had the buses that were in place in a couple of key spots where, a hub of where a lot of the prospects were. They bussed the kids in. and we filled the bus, and we got the parents involved, and they brought them right on campus for a full day that was designed for those prospects. And so you can get really creative with how you get them over the phone to get them locked into an on-campus visit. So sorry about that. Go ahead, Phil. Let's move on to the next slide.
Yeah, I think we want to move along with this. One of the things, though, that I've often thought of, and perhaps each of you can think of it from my point of view, and that is having a webinar, putting up a group of experts from the institution that could actually speak with the children. Now, I think it's a great idea. It's not only mine. There's another company, I believe, that does it. But how interesting would that be to actually go right into the living room in a webinar, speak with both the parents and maybe a neighbor, grandparent, who knows, could be there during the webinar. You could have a financial aid person, you could have a student, and someone from admissions and so on, answering questions right there on a webinar. These are the kinds of things that call centers are now involved in. So don't think of it as just a phone call. There are many other opportunities that a call center can help you with.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think, did you plan that, or I don't know, but it's a nice segue to into our final slide here in talking about the different technologies that are out there and available. As we talked about throughout, the automation and use of technology is very important. Obviously, speed, when you think about automating the effort, the project, is crucial. How many people can you get on the phone? How many conversations can you have? How many appointments can you set? How many warm transfers can you have? Obviously, all of that starts with the number of attempts that you make out to those folks. So speed and volume of calls that you can make through automation is the key. Obviously, there's other benefits when you automate your projects. Consistency of the delivery of your program. You can get scripting that comes into the automation inside the technology that will allow the same type of approach that is being delivered from students or an outsourcer to deliver a consistent approach to the overall effort. Reporting. If you're in a manual mode, reporting is a bit limited, or at least it's very manual, and the standpoint it's going to take a lot more time and effort. When you're in an automated environment, most technology platforms will provide some, at least out of the can, some good reports. And when you talk to those that are in higher education, you'll have custom, standardized higher education reports that really speaks to the job that you're performing. Obviously, monitoring is crucial. So when you're managing your students on campus or even outsourcer, you want to have monitoring capabilities to make sure that you're delivering a message the right way. And as a manager of those calls, you want to hear and make sure that the feedback that you're being heard is being captured. And if you have to fine-tune that message at any time, what better way to do that is by listening to live calls happening, listening to recorded calls. If you're in a manual mode, you may not have recording capability. So those are types of things that automation will bring you. And I don't know how much we really talked about this, but if there is a concern about space on campus, through hosting, you don't even necessarily have to be on campus. I mean, you have options, and you have technology today that you can manage those students from wherever they are. They might be on campus in a dorm room, or they might be in an office building with you, or maybe they're off campus. All they need today is a computer with high-speed internet, and I think most kids have that today. So, it may be very doable, so don't let space be a constraint or the determining factor. There are options out there, and with the tools that technology brings you, you'll feel very comfortable that you're able to deploy a project and have the controls that you need over that program. Leaving effective messages, obviously, whether it's through texting or broadcast messages. Those types of things are available to you today. Obviously, getting in touch with these folks sometimes are difficult, whether they're not answering their phone or they're just not available when you're calling them. Leaving an effective message or giving them the ability to text is another good way to communicate. So through your direct mail, through your emails, through any of your outreach methods, aside from a phone, you might also have the capability to allow them to send in a text message using a keyword for your institution, and that can drive a different level of communications, which we could obviously talk about in great detail at another time. So texting is an option. Website strategy, the last one listed there. A lot of educational institutions are still using search tools, and unfortunately, and as Bill even mentioned early on, if a lot of kids are going to be going to your website, and if they don't have a good experience, or if they're not finding the information that they're looking for relatively quickly, they may make a decision right then and there that they're not going to go to your institution. They may actually leave. And I know that there's strong statistics out there that if your website's not delivering information quickly, that you may have a problem. So there are other pieces of technology out there using knowledge bases and chat functionality that can also be integrated with your call center. It gives better information, consistent information, and the right information. One question, one answer type of an approach. Any other last thoughts on technology, Bill, before we move on to the Q&A?
No, I think Phil mentioned that we have a short period of time left for some questions and answers. Why don't we move on to that?
All right. First of all, guys, thanks again so much for your information, of course, and hopefully it's helped everybody. But the questions and answers may also be some help here, too, hopefully. The first one is, this one, he said, I had to step away when you started talking about this. And then the next part is, if you're talking with a prospect, you said to ask if we can have a counselor contact them. Isn't there a tool or something that we can use to schedule them right there?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sure there is.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about a few different methods when you have a prospect on the phone with either a student or maybe it's with an outsourcer. One is a warm transfer. So you can get a counselor, if you have a counselor standing by, where we can get that student on the phone with a counselor immediately. So you put them on hold for 10 seconds, and you get that counselor on the phone, and the two of them can continue their conversation for as long as they need to. And the student caller or the outsourced caller can go back to making more calls. That's one way. We also talked about a calendaring system, and I'm not sure, I mean, that's another way to handle it, where you can get it calendared by using some form of a shared calendar where the caller that's making that outbound call to the prospect can actually see what the counselor's availability is on particular days and times. They can schedule it on that calendar so that not only will the student be aware of when it's going to be, but also the counselor is, and any other caller that might be integrated with that calendar can see that a calendar or an appointment was booked, so nobody else books it. So a calendaring system is a good way to do that as well immediately. So there's an immediacy to that. Making sure that the parent knows when that appointment is going to be made is a great way to ensure that your show rates to that next appointment is going to be held as well. So those are a few things, and obviously there's other things that you can do to cement that appointment that you do make, maybe through emails, follow-up letters prior to that appointment time.
Great. Perfect. Thanks so much. There's a couple of questions here about getting copies of the slides or a recording of the webinar. And yes, we'll have this on the website. And the website is right here, whoop, sorry about that, gang. I'm not going to make you go through all these again. It's down here. The website is www.stockadegroup.com. And so we'll have this posted out there. I believe it's under the news, but you'll be able to find it, no problem. The actual recording and the slides will be out there. So moving on. There's a couple here. I want to kind of group them. If we want to have our own students calling, how would we go about selecting them? What do we look for? That's a wide open question. Who wants it? That's really a good question, though, too.
Because the first thing you want to start with, and it's something that I just discovered, is that if you're using work-study students, you have to take whoever walks through the door and employ them. Whereas if you want to be selective in who it is that you use to conduct these surveys, then you must step away from work study. Now, you might want to check into that a little bit further, but it did come from a reliable source. A vice president of admissions at a large university. The other thing is, of course, the training that they go through and the quality of the student. Always try to use one that is upper class, juniors, seniors, grad students. The more life experience that they have, the better it will be for you and for the prospect that they're talking to. They've just been around a while, and when you're using a freshman, I often call that a kindergarten. You have to watch them every second. They are easily distracted. They're just starting the learning process in higher education. So I would say those would be two things you would like to consider, and I know Joe has some thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I think the key is just, personality. That's where I would start. You want to talk to, do you want to talk to this person on the phone? You only have your voice, and how they can interact with somebody on the phone. They need to feel very comfortable. And how do you do that? Well, it's through conversation, both in person and over the phone, before you make a decision of whether or not you want to, if you have that decision-making capability, to bring them in and have them part of the phone room. So that's where I would start. I mean, obviously, there's other qualities that you can begin to look into as far as what Bill was saying, as far as what kind of a program they're in, what year are they in. Are they somebody that meets the broad view of the type of student that you want to bring in? Then that's a good fit.
Okay.
Are they reliable too?
Yeah.
You have to make absolutely sure. Yeah, have a manual and make sure that they sign it. And here are the rules and regulations. We can't have somebody showing up for half an hour and leaving. We can't have somebody saying, well, I'm going to be there Tuesday afternoon and not show up. This is very, very important, is to make sure that they fully understand that this is a very serious undertaking. It will help them academically and all through their life. But most important, this is a serious endeavor that they're involved in, because we want to make sure, or you want to make sure, that the student is able to connect with other students and connect in an adult manner. So think about those things when you start to put together a call center on your own, if you do so.
Perfect answer. And role playing is another good thing that we've always used, and that tells us a little more about the people too, if they can think on their feet as well as follow directions. So this next question I love, because we've been talking about this quite a bit, and we might even have something coming up on this. And the question is it smart to use the same people for both development, I'm looking at abbreviations, for both development and admissions? Yeah.
Yeah, we do it all the time, and have been for, gosh, over 20 years. the two go together. We work with both sides of the house, personally, us here, admissions and development, and it's get the student in the door. We look at it this way. We go to work for higher education every day, whether it be development or admissions. And we help an institution, and most other call centers do the same thing, is help get the student in the door, and then if you do the development side, we help keep them there and to graduate. So yes, it's okay. Also, another thing you can do is you can schedule your call center for different times and different days, I should say. Admissions one day, develop another, and so on and so forth. And you just develop a schedule that works out throughout the year.
There's also a couple side benefits too. Is training. It'll reduce the amount of training and turnover over the course of the year as well. So you know, if you're developing these folks that have strong telephone skills, number one, that's half the battle. You know, so if you can get them to have strong telephone etiquette over the phone, whether it's for admissions or development, if you can do that, that's, like I said, it's half the battle. So you can use those same agents, the same students in multiple different capacities throughout the year, and it's going to lower your overall training needs and your overall turnover. And then, of course, there's cost savings too. You know, by implementing, whether it's technology-based or you know, as well as the training. So you know, there's some cost and training things that just came to mind there when you're using the same students for both purposes.
Great. Okay, one last question here. We're getting real close, and then some closing comments, if you will. The final question is, does Stockade have phone training for students or others at a school who might be calling prospects? And I think you touched on that. Well, I don't know. Go ahead and answer that one, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, as part of our services, we do offer training as part of our hosted packages. So what we'll do is we'll come on site and work with the students and the managers directly for a few days. You know, usually it's a couple of days, at least one full day with managers, at least another full shift for calling, so that we can be there on site, teach telephone etiquette from the beginning, make sure that they understand how to use the surveying instrument, as well as the, you know, how they're interacting with whether it's a prospective student or with the development, you know, and they're looking for raising funds. So the short answer is yes, and you know, if you want any more information about how we go about setting up a hosted call center with on-site training, just let us know, and we can have another conversation.
And I might add to that also the virtual part of it, virtual training, focus groups that we can hold via teleconference or video. So these are mechanisms that are available to us. When we have a hosted situation with a college, we're listening to the same delivery, the same presentation as the supervisor is. We're looking at the same statistical information that the supervisor at the call center is, and we can interact virtually with the call center minute to minute, hold training sessions, focus groups, all of the above.
Wonderful. With that, gentlemen, thank you once again. Thank you all who took time out of your busy days to come and listen. There's actually two questions. I do want to hit on this real quickly. The gist of their question is, you said this would be a 1, 2, 3 kind of how to set up a calling campaign, but I didn't get that out of there. And I think I can start off the short answer with, it's so difficult to say 1, 2, 3 because that may apply to you or your school, but not any of the others. So that's why we present it this way. Questions to ask, etc. Joe, Bill, comments on that, or
Yes, a strong comment. We talked yesterday about this very fact and whether this should be a series, an ongoing series, that to help with specifics. This is a general conversation that we had today, things to take a look at. But specifically, our plans are to put together some very specific info sessions, they might be called.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing I can add to that is I apologize we didn't deliver what you hoped to get from today. Feel free to give us a call. We can talk through any questions that you have. My time is available for you, so feel free to give us a call. We can just chat.
And it doesn't matter if you're connected with someone else, another call center, or you're doing it yourself, all by yourself. We're open to answer. We work in higher education. We're here to help. Whether you're a client or not, feel free to call us, and we'll talk to you.
Fair enough. All right, everyone, time to go. Again, thank you. Have a great day, and watch your email for the next one in our educational series. We've got an exciting one coming up in about 3 weeks, I believe, possibly 4. But yeah, watch your email. We'll be sending out some invitations for the next webinar. Appreciate your time, everyone. Go. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.